Hey guys, welcome back to Watch Trading Academy, and today we are talking about Rolex. Again, the new models, the new lineup, and what you think about it. This is going to be an exciting episode for Watch Trading Academy. All right guys, so Rolex just announced some incredible new watches, and I'm really excited about some of them that we're going to talk about today. So the first one that I think is obvious to talk about, because it's they've done this so brilliantly from a marketing standpoint, because you can see where they're going. They are trying to make the Sky Dweller the new basic Daytona, kind of like the powerhouse of the Daytona, and the next level to people that usually are going from a day date into a Daytona. Now they're trying to make them go from a day date to a Sky to a Daytona. So you can see the marketing play, it's all over, and you can see that with both the green dial stainless and the blue rose gold, which phenomenal. I mean, just beautiful units. I think a spectacular move by Rolex. It just makes sense. It's beautiful, it's exciting, and they nailed that. So I think the Sky Dweller lineup is fantastic and a beautiful and exciting just addition to what they've already done. Now, I've always been a big fan of the Sky Dweller. I think it's a perfect size for a wrist. It's a 43 millimeter. Some people argue that it's too large. I think it's just such a flawless, exciting, big watch without being overly big and obnoxious, and I think it just works really well, so I'm excited about these new special reiterations. I've never been a fan of the GMTs, so seeing a new gold, all Jubilee band, not necessarily something I care about too much. I know people are gonna be excited about it. There's a lot of diehard Rolex fans that just like that stuff. I think it's just very bland and basic, and I'm just not a fan. But doesn't mean it's a bad watch. I think it'll do very well on resale, especially with the all gold Jubilee, right? Now, the watch that I think is the most controversial one that people aren't, well, they're talking about it, but they're talking about it in a negative light, even though I think it's one of the greatest things they've ever put out. And it's these new Perpetual things that are baby blue with all these balloons and puzzle pieces on them. Now, the majority of people would argue that these are some of the ugliest things Rolex has put out. It's clown moves and blah, 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 blah. I think it's just brilliant, and I think one thing that people aren't paying attention to today, as they're kind of looking to the future of the industry as a whole, is that a lot of these manufacturers are losing big market share to exciting watch brands that are doing exciting designs. And that's something that conventional, watchmakers are going to have to look outside of their thought process. Like, I mean, if you get, for example, an AP, you know what you're getting. Like, if you get a Patek, you know what you're getting. There's no playfulness to these brands, and I think Rolex is trying to break that mold of being known as this serious watch brand and starting to transition into a playful brand in one of its divisions, especially in its entry-level stage. Now, it's important to note this because if we look at the history of how brands like Hublot have used design to basically take a competitive advantage and gain market share, even though we know their movements aren't that great and blah, blah, blah. Their skeletonized dials, their colors, their excitement. People get excited about that stuff, and watches are becoming more and more of an expressive form of display of status, but it's just a reality that happens. It's not like by buying a Hublot or Rolex, you're gonna keep better time or you're gonna know the movement in your watch and that makes a difference. It really doesn't. So a big part of the aspiration of watches going mainstream is that they're gonna appeal to a main audience that looks at design before anything else. And Rolex is leading the pack in that area, so I think they're doing a really good job. And I think that was the most exciting kind of piece in their release because of the future of it, not necessarily because I think those pieces are great. But they've seen this with Bamford. They distanced themselves from the Bamford department and doing collaborations with them, so there's no more like Mickey Mouse watches and things like that. And I think they knew that, and they discontinued and kind of pushed away from these relationships because of these new upcoming releases, and they wanted to give space in between. So Bamford ended up working with Tag Heuer and some of these other brands instead. So I think this was an excellent move for Rolex and a very exciting move for what the future of Rolex will be. So very exciting stuff there on those particular releases. Now, I will talk finally about the Daytonas, because the Daytona is obviously the most popular range of watches from Rolex. Let's talk about these changes in the Platinum and the Panda, two watches that obviously have been notorious for the brand as like the pinnacle of what they do, right? The most notorious high dollar Daytona, not saying the highest dollar. I know there are rainbows and things like that, but I'm saying the non-diamond dials. You have a Platinum, you have the ice blue face, and they've changed two key things that I think are gonna work in their favor and against them at the same time. With the Daytonas, you have a much thinner and very different subdial, which again, might take time getting used to, but we'll see how that plays out. Sometimes when something is new, we automatically discard it. As we see it keep going, we end up kind of warming up to it and liking it. We do this with cars all the time. You know, a new model comes out, we go, oh, I like the old model better. And then after 5 years, we wouldn't even look at the old model. And we go, now that I've seen all these variations and stuff, that's what I like. So will be interesting to see how that plays out. But something critical did happen to the Daytona line, and it's the open case back. And while the Daytona movement is probably one of the furthest thing from interesting in the watch brand as a whole, like in the watch industry, the Daytona movement is one that is reliable, but is not one that is beautiful. I mean, I would argue that even Hublot Mecha 10 movements look more exciting and fun than the Daytona movement. But reality is, it's been quite a while, and I think Rolex also realized that Artisan de Genève and many of these skeleton brands are getting massive money for variations of their Daytonas in skeletonized format. So I think, again, a very good step in the right direction with open case backs. At the very least, if a watch is not skeleton, it should have an open case back, in my opinion, because that is the beauty and the excitement of the watch itself. And when you take that design element away, then it just doesn't make sense. So I would argue that that's probably a better move across all watch lines and all watches to kind of showcase the movement. And I think Rolex is starting to do that. So I think this is an exciting step again. Could it possibly lead to a very high-end skeletonized Daytona down the road? Possibly. I mean, Artisan de Genève has done really well with these. They've done a great job at pulling these out, so we will see where it leads. But those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments which of the latest Rolex releases you think are the hottest watches out there, or the ones to be buying or calling your AD about. And of course, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll catch you next time for Watch Trading Academy.